on the wheel. Whose car is this?
It's my car. Why did you pull me over like this?
You match a suspect driving a stolen sedan. Don't you move.
Then look up the plate. I'm not playing with you.
Don't reach. Keep your hands exactly where I can see them.
I'm not reaching. Stop trying to escalate this. My identification is right there on the dash.
I'm the police captain.
I don't care who you say you are.
Officer Kyle Stevens had been with the Aurora Police Department for 15 years. In those 15 years, he'd accumulated 32 formal complaints. 27 of them involved black men he'd pulled over without legitimate traffic violations in areas bordering Denver. A black detective in an unmarked car was stopped for suspicious driving. A black sergeant in a personal vehicle was detained for improper lane change. That video later disproved. A black lieutenant driving home from work was searched for drugs during a routine stop with no violation. A black off-duty officer was handcuffed for matching a description that was never verified. A black commander was arrested for resisting when he identified himself and asked for the reason for the stop. A black deputy chief in civilian clothes was pulled over for erratic driving when he was going the speed limit. A black officer from a neighboring jurisdiction was detained for suspicious behavior with no articulated violation. Every complaint ended the same way: internal affairs review that cleared him, use of force justification that protected him, bias training he attended but dismissed, union grievances that blocked discipline, written warnings that accumulated in a file that supervisors couldn't act on because of union protection. One Friday evening in Aurora, his 15-year pattern of pretextual stops targeting black men in nice cars, including law enforcement officers, finally confronted someone who didn't just work in law enforcement, but someone who commanded an entire division of a major police department, who reported directly to the chief, who had authority over hundreds of officers, and whose arrest would create a crisis between two neighboring police departments and expose systemic racism within law enforcement itself. That confrontation would end Stevens's career, cost the city $5 million, and expose a department that had ignored 32 complaints over 15 years. Captain Robert Harris, a 46-year-old police captain with the Denver Police Department, that was driving through Aurora after a regional command staff meeting when he saw flashing lights behind him. His police credentials were in his wallet, his badge was in the center console, his departmental identification was clearly visible. No traffic violation, no erratic driving, no legitimate reason for the stop, just a police captain driving through a neighboring jurisdiction. But Officer Stevens saw him through a lens so warped by racial assumptions that he couldn't process a black man in a Cadillac sedan as anything other than suspicious. Certainly not as a captain who commanded a division, and definitely not as someone whose arrest would trigger investigations at the state and federal level. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Hit that subscribe button. These stories expose the truth. Aurora, Colorado, a major city adjacent to Denver, home to over 380,000 residents, with a police department that had a troubled history with civil rights and a pattern of incidents involving black residents and officers from neighboring jurisdictions. It was 7:45 p.m. on a Friday evening, temperature 68 degrees, clear skies. Traffic was moderate as people headed home for the weekend or out for evening plans. Captain Robert Harris had been in law enforcement for 23 years, the last 7 as a captain with the Denver Police Department, where he commanded the Major Crimes Division overseeing homicide, robbery, and assault investigations. He'd started as a patrol officer in Denver, worked his way up through the ranks, detective, sergeant, lieutenant, then captain. He'd graduated from the University of Colorado with a degree in criminal justice, then earned his master's degree in public administration from the University of Denver. He'd completed the FBI National Academy, the Senior Management Institute for Police, and numerous other leadership programs. He supervised 85 detectives and officers, managed complex investigations, coordinated with federal agencies, and was being groomed for deputy chief. He'd received multiple commendations, including the department's Medal of Valor for an incident where he'd saved a fellow officer's life. He testified regularly in court, briefed the mayor and city council, and was respected across Colorado law enforcement, except, apparently, by some officers in Aurora who had a reputation for not respecting black men regardless of their credentials. He earned $132,000 annually. He drove a personal Cadillac CTS he'd purchased with his own money, a car that reflected his success and rank. That evening, Captain Harris had attended a regional command staff meeting in Aurora, a regular gathering of captains, commanders, and chiefs from Denver, Aurora, and surrounding jurisdictions to coordinate on regional crime issues, gang activity, and interjurisdictional cases. He'd presented on a major homicide investigation his division had successfully closed. After the meeting, he'd changed from his uniform into civilian clothes, slacks, and a button-down shirt for the drive home. He was driving through Aurora on his way back to Denver, obeying all traffic laws, thinking about the cases his detectives were working when he noticed an Aurora PD patrol car following him for several blocks. He checked his speed, 32 in a 35 mph zone. He'd signaled every turn. He'd stopped completely at stop signs. Then the lights came on. Do you think officers should state violations before ordering people out of vehicles? Drop your answer below. Officer Kyle Stevens had those 32 complaints over 15 years. 27 involved black men, including several law enforcement officers from other departments. A pattern so extreme and undeniable that multiple Aurora PD supervisors had recommended his termination, that Denver PD had filed formal complaints about Stevens harassing their off-duty officers, that the Colorado Post, peace officer, Standards and Training Board had received complaints about him, and that Internal Affairs had flagged him as a severe liability in interactions with black men, especially those in professional positions or law enforcement. But the police union had successfully blocked every disciplinary action, arguing that Stevens was being targeted for doing his job, and that complaints from other departments were professional jealousy. His personnel file contained documentation of complaints from off-duty officers, black professionals, and community members dating back over a decade. One Internal Affairs report from 18 months ago specifically stated, Officer Stevens demonstrates a pattern of targeting black male motorists, including verified law enforcement officers from neighboring jurisdictions, creating significant interdepartmental tension and liability. His inability to recognize fellow officers as legitimate, even when they identify themselves, suggests deep-seated racial bias that no amount of training has corrected. Recommend immediate termination before he creates a major incident. The recommendation was blocked by the union president who threatened legal action and media campaigns. Stevens remained on patrol because the system valued union power over officer safety, interdepartmental relations, and constitutional rights. That evening, Stevens was patrolling near the Denver border when he saw a black man driving a Cadillac with tinted windows. No traffic violation occurred, but Stevens followed him for 5 blocks, looking for any reason to justify a stop. When none materialized, he pulled him over anyway, planning to claim failure to maintain lane in his report, a vague violation impossible to disprove, and one he'd used successfully many times before. Captain Harris pulled over carefully, put his car in park, turned off the engine, placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, and took a deep breath. He'd trained thousands of officers on traffic stops during his career. He knew the procedure intimately. He knew the risks. He'd investigated officer-involved shootings. He'd reviewed countless dashcam videos. He'd testified as an expert on police practices. He kept his hands visible and waited. Stevens approached the driver's window with aggressive body language, his hand already on his weapon in a stance that Captain Harris immediately recognized as confrontational rather than tactically sound. "Pull over immediately." Captain Harris spoke calmly with command presence. "Officer, I've pulled over. What's the traffic violation?" "License and registration. Don't question me." The captain's extensive training and experience kicked in. "Officer, I'm asking respectfully, and I have a right to know. What traffic violation did I commit? I was traveling below the speed limit, signaled all turns, and stopped at all stop signs." Stevens's hand moved closer to his weapon in a way that violated every principle Captain Harris had ever taught. "Step out of the vehicle now." "I need to know the legal basis for this stop. I'm Captain Robert Harris, Denver Police Department, Major Crimes Division. My police credentials are in my wallet. My badge is in the center console. I attended the regional command staff meeting in Aurora tonight. We were just together at the training center. I'm a police captain. Should police captains be arrested by officers from neighboring departments? Let me know what you think." Stevens sneered with visible contempt that shocked the captain. "Sure you are. Everyone's a cop when they get pulled over. Out of the vehicle or you're going to jail." "Officer, I'm serious. I'm Captain Robert Harris, Denver PD. I command major crimes. I supervise 85 detectives and officers. I was at the command staff meeting at your training center tonight. Your chief was there. I presented on the Martinez homicide case. You can verify this with your dispatch. Call your supervisor. I'm a police captain. Last warning. Get out now." Captain Harris pulled out his phone with one hand while keeping the other visible on the wheel. "I'm recording this interaction. Officer Stevens, badge number unclear, Aurora Police Department, has pulled me over without stating a traffic violation. I've identified myself as Captain Robert Harris, Denver Police Department, Major Crimes Division. I'm a police captain being detained without legal basis by an officer from a neighboring jurisdiction. Stevens opened the door forcefully, his tactics all wrong from a training perspective. You're under arrest for impersonating a police officer and obstruction. Impersonating? I am a police officer. I'm a captain. I command a division. This is a catastrophic mistake that will have serious consequences for interdepartmental relations. Stevens grabbed Captain Harris's arm and pulled him out of the vehicle roughly, a use of force the captain immediately recognized as excessive and unjustified. Captain Harris didn't resist physically but spoke clearly and firmly for his recording and for passing motorists. I am not resisting. I am complying. I am Captain Robert Harris, Denver Police Department, Major Crimes Division. I am a 23-year law enforcement veteran. I command the homicide, robbery, and assault units. I report directly to the Chief of Police. Officer Stevens is arresting me for driving while black. I have committed no traffic violation. I was at a command staff meeting with Aurora leadership tonight. This is a violation of my rights and will create a serious interdepartmental incident. Motorists were stopping, several recognizing the situation was wrong. He said he's a police captain, one shouted. This is wrong, another yelled. Stevens handcuffed Captain Harris, the metal tight on his wrists that had cuffed hundreds of suspects during arrests, that had signed search warrants and arrest warrants, that had shaken hands with mayors and police chiefs, that commanded respect from detectives and patrol officers throughout Denver. He walked him toward the patrol car while Captain Harris continued documenting in his command voice. I am a captain in the Denver Police Department. I've been in law enforcement for 23 years. I command 85 officers. I attended the FBI National Academy. I was at your department's command staff meeting tonight. Officer Stevens has arrested me for driving while black in Aurora. I have witnesses. I have video evidence. The time is 7:58 p.m. My police credentials and badge are in my vehicle. This will have serious consequences involving both departments and likely state and federal oversight. Stevens placed him in the back of the patrol car with unnecessary force, pushing his head down hard despite the captain offering no resistance, another violation that would go in the report. Through the window, Captain Harris could see his Cadillac with the door open, his badge visible in the center console where he'd told Stevens it would be, his police identification visible. He was thinking about the investigations this would trigger, the embarrassment to both departments, the reforms this would force, and the inevitable question, if a captain can be arrested, what happens to regular citizens? The drive to the Aurora PD station took 23 minutes through traffic. Captain Harris spent every minute thinking about his detectives who looked up to him, the cases his division was working, the message this would send to black officers throughout Colorado, the lawsuit he'd have to file against a neighboring department. They arrived at Aurora PD's District 1 station. Stevens walked him inside, still handcuffed, past a desk sergeant who looked up and immediately froze in recognition. The sergeant had been at the command staff meeting that evening. Stevens, what? Captain Harris? From Denver? Captain Harris spoke before Stevens could. Sergeant? Yes? I'm Captain Robert Harris, Denver PD, Major Crimes Division. I attended the command staff meeting at your training center tonight. I presented on the Martinez case. I was driving home when Officer Stevens pulled me over without stating a violation. I identified myself as a captain. He arrested me for impersonating an officer. My credentials and badge are in my vehicle. I need you to contact Aurora Police Chief Morrison and Denver Police Chief Rodriguez immediately. This is now an interdepartmental crisis situation. The desk sergeant was already reaching for the phone, his hands shaking. Captain Harris, I saw your presentation tonight. Oh my God. Stevens, what have you done? Stevens still didn't fully grasp the magnitude. He claimed to be a captain but couldn't immediately prove. He is a captain. He was at our command staff meeting. I was there. Your chief was there. He presented a case study. The sergeant was dialing Aurora Chief Morrison's direct line, his voice panicked. Chief, we have a major situation. Our officers just arrested Captain Harris from Denver PD. Yes, ma'am. Captain Robert Harris, who presented tonight. He's in handcuffs right now. Officer Stevens, I don't know, ma'am. No violation I can determine. I'll find out immediately, ma'am. Within minutes, the station erupted into controlled chaos. Aurora Police Chief Morrison was on the phone, her voice sharp with anger and concern. Within 10 minutes, she arrived at the station personally. Within 15 minutes, Denver Police Chief Rodriguez had been notified and was on the phone. Within 20 minutes, both mayors had been informed. Within 30 minutes, every command staff officer who'd been at the meeting knew what happened. Within an hour, the story was breaking. A Denver police captain arrested by Aurora PD while driving home. Chief Morrison approached Captain Harris, who was still handcuffed in an interview room, and removed them herself, her face showing genuine horror and anger. "Captain Harris, I cannot express how sorry I am. You were my guest at tonight's meeting. This is unconscionable. You're being released immediately. This should never have happened. This is a crisis." She turned to Stevens, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "You arrested a captain from Denver PD, a division commander who presented at our command staff meeting 3 hours ago. You ignored his identification. You accused him of impersonating when he is a captain who I personally invited to speak tonight. Badge and weapon. You're suspended without pay immediately, pending termination and state post investigation." Stevens finally understood, his face draining of color. "Chief, I didn't know." "You arrested a captain from Denver PD. He told you who he was. He offered credentials. He was at our meeting. You've generated 32 complaints in 15 years. Denver PD has complained about you harassing their officers. Supervisors have recommended your termination multiple times. And now you've arrested a captain. Your career is over. This is an interdepartmental crisis. Badge, weapon, now." By that evening, the story had exploded throughout Colorado law enforcement and then nationally. Every law enforcement publication covered it. An Aurora officer arresting a Denver captain. The law enforcement community was shocked. The Colorado Post Board announced an immediate investigation. The state attorney general launched a civil rights investigation into Aurora PD's pattern of incidents. Both departments' unions were in crisis mode. The story became a case study in what happens when racial bias overrides even the most obvious professional credentials. Captain Harris held a press conference in his Denver PD uniform, his command presence evident, his captain's bars visible. "I'm a captain in the Denver Police Department. I've served 23 years in law enforcement. I command the Major Crimes Division, supervising 85 detectives and officers. I was at a command staff meeting in Aurora last night, presenting on a successful homicide investigation. 3 hours later, I was arrested by an Aurora officer who saw a black man in a nice car and assumed crime. Even when I identified myself as a captain, with specifics about the meeting we'd both just been at, he accused me of impersonation." He paused, his voice carrying authority and pain. 32 complaints in 15 years, 27 involving black men, including several law enforcement officers. Multiple supervisors tried to terminate him. The union blocked it every time. Aurora PD protected an officer who was creating interdepartmental incidents and harassing fellow officers. I had my rank, my credentials, my position. I just presented to their command staff. None of it mattered because I'm black. If this can happen to a captain, imagine what happens to citizens who don't have a badge. Captain Harris filed a comprehensive federal lawsuit 20 months later against Officer Kyle Stevens, his supervisors who'd ignored 32 complaints, Aurora PD, and the city. The allegations were unprecedented: unlawful traffic stop of a police captain without probable cause, false arrest of a division commander, false imprisonment of a law enforcement official, assault on a police captain, deprivation of rights under color of law, racial profiling despite professional identification, interference with law enforcement operations, damage to interdepartmental relations, intentional infliction of emotional distress on a command officer, deliberate indifference to Stevens's pattern despite complaints from neighboring departments, and violation of professional courtesy protocols between jurisdictions. The complaint included Stevens's complete record: 32 complaints over 15 years, 27 involving black men including verified police officers, multiple termination recommendations blocked by unions, formal complaints from Denver PD. Aurora's city attorneys found the case legally and politically indefensible. Dashcams showed no violation. The plaintiff was a captain who'd presented at their meeting. Denver PD was demanding accountability. The state post board was investigating. Stevens had zero legal basis. The pattern showed deliberate indifference. The city settled 26 months later. $5 million paid to Captain Robert Harris, one of the largest settlements involving a police officer as victim. Officer Kyle Stevens was terminated immediately, and faced state post decertification and federal charges for deprivation of rights under color of law against a law enforcement officer. He pleaded guilty to avoid trial and received 33 months in federal prison. His name was permanently decertified by Colorado Post. He would never work in law enforcement again. Captain Harris testified before the Colorado legislature and in congressional hearings on police reform. "I'm a captain. I command a division. I've trained hundreds of officers. I was arrested for being black by an officer from a neighboring department. 32 complaints, multiple termination attempts blocked by unions. Denver had complained about him harassing our officers. The system protected Stevens while he created interdepartmental crises. I had every credential imaginable. None of it mattered. If a captain can be arrested despite identifying himself, the system is fundamentally broken." He continued, "$5 million is what Aurora taxpayers paid. But money doesn't undo being handcuffed by a fellow officer who refused to believe I was a captain. It doesn't restore the trust between departments. And it doesn't protect black men who don't have badges and rank." Aurora PD and Colorado implemented sweeping reforms: mandatory verification of law enforcement credentials, automatic termination at 2 similar complaints, elimination of union protections for interdepartmental incidents, state post oversight, professional courtesy protocols with strict penalties. Stevens is in federal prison and permanently decertified. The city paid $5 million, but that came after 15 years and multiple block terminations. The case became required training in Colorado police academies about racial bias and professional courtesy. Captain Harris was later promoted to deputy chief in Denver. Comment if arresting fellow officers should carry enhanced penalties. And if these stories matter, hit that subscribe button. This isn't about one officer or one captain. It's about systems that protect officers with documented patterns even when they harass fellow law enforcement, and what it means when even a captain isn't safe from racial profiling.